Hey guys, ILene Vick here for Adult Coloring by ILene Vick, and this video is part 2 of my teaching instruction talking about how to use white space as a design element and also adding designs of your own. So be sure you've seen part 1 so you can see exactly what I'm doing and how far I've gotten. So what I decided to do was to go ahead and add a drop shadow to my pieces or my different fish. And I wanted to show you exactly how I did that because there has been some question with some people. They're not comfortable doing it. They don't know how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do some of these for you so you can see exactly how I did do it. And as you can see, it really makes your pieces pop. So I've got some colored fish here. I've got the other ones that are just still white, of course. And as I showed you in my last video, there's one of my gem fish that I did. There's another gem fish. I've done a video on that as well if you want to learn how to do it. And there's my little green fish that I dotted with my Uniball white pen ink. So this is a really neat page to do. It's a 2-page spread. And as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've done my blue around the outside of all my fish. And now I'm going back and deciding what further things I want to do with it, adding my drop shadow and so forth. Okay, so here are the pencils that I'm going to be using and I have used. And again, just recapping a little bit, I have my Faber-Castell. There you go. See if you can see that. There, Faber-Castell. In this particular one, this is the sky blue. And boy, that guy's really gotten short. The other one that I was using was my Derwent Durasoft. I used the pale blue C370. It's identical to the Faber-Castell. That one is short as well, but it's longer than my sky blue. There we go. So you can see what's going on here as far as lengths. Alright, the other tools that I'm using are my Mono Zero. Let's see, by Tombro. I'm sorry I can't see that right now. If you're having problems seeing it, let me adjust my light a little bit and see if that makes a difference for you. And let's see, there you go. So my Mono Zero, and in this case, as I told you, this is the little pointed one. There's another one that looks like a rectangle. I'm finding, and people had questions about that, I'm finding that I use the one that's got the point. Let me see if I can bring this in closer and see if it'll focus. No. Okay, so it's a point, and it helps you get into really teeny tiny places, like when you color over a line, so that's really been great for that. Okay, and then I'm also using the colorless blender pencil. It's just for blending your colors. It's called colorless because it's colorless and it allows you to move your pencil colors around and blend them right into the paper. So that's the next tool I'm using. And the final tool that I'm going to be using, again by Faber-Castell, and this color, which I cannot pronounce. Let's see here if I can get that closer and get it to focus. Oh, I hate that when that happens. Anyway, in Dantrine Blue. It's number 247, so you can look that up. Alright, so let's start doing some coloring here instead of listening to me trying to pronounce those things. Alright, so I'm going to turn the page because of number 1 where the camera is, and number 2 it's going to be a little bit easier for me to do the coloring from the side. Doesn't matter how you turn the page, it's up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. Let me focus in on one of these little guys so you know you can see what I'm doing with it. Let's see, how about that one? Right, where are we here? Right here. Okay, so I'm going to be doing that one for you. Let me move my camera. All right, so I'm taking my dark blue pencil, sorry for the wiggling, and let me start here. First of all, I'm going to sharpen this. Use my little cup with my Cum K-U-M sharpener. I love it. Works really well. You don't want to get too sharp of a point. And all I'm doing to start this now is I'm going to outline with a very thin line my fish in dark blue. And remember what I told you earlier, be sure to rest your hand on a piece of paper towel so that you don't smear your previous coloring. So I'm doing a nice little narrow line here. I'm probably pressing as far as how hard. I'm probably about maybe a 7 on a scale from 1 to 10. Now, that looks kind of neat as it is. I've got to correct something here. Another thing I've shown you is sometimes when I have an errant line, I will use an X-Acto knife. Now, I would do this last resort, especially if you're not familiar with coloring. But all I'm doing is I'm carefully scraping off the top layer of the pencil to get rid of the area that I don't want the pencil to be in. And again, remember I told you about the duster brush, so you're not using your hand. Look at my last video on this topic, video part 1 on this, if you have any question. So okay, I've outlined the fish now with the dark blue. Now, using the same pencil, and again my pressure was what, 7 or 8? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten up, maybe probably about a 4 or a 5. And I'm going to bring the shadow out. Now when you do a shadow, it's really best to do it, if your surface is blue, do a blue shadow. If you can't, gray is usually a pretty good one to use. Use your judgment on that. So now I'm coloring lighter. I'm not pressing very hard at all. And I probably colored out maybe 1/4 of an inch. And the further you go out, the lighter you want to press, so that it kind of drifts off, if that makes sense. And stay parallel to the item that you're creating the drop shadow around, because obviously you don't want to put any other changes of directions in there because it isn't going to look right. So again, the further out that I'm going, the lighter that I'm going, lighter that I'm pressing, excuse me. Now, that looks pretty decent, but I want to get my effect a little bit better yet. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my blending pencil, still resting on my paper towel, and I'm going to gently blend that pencil color that I just laid down. And that will soften it further as far as looking like a shadow. Now, I'm not using my blender pencil right next to the fish because I really don't want to soften that initial line and that initial outline that I did. And see, as I'm using my blender pencil, how it's blending really nicely into that blue background that I laid down. And just for giggles and laughs, I'm going to darken this one more time, right up next to the fish. Take your time, you're not in a race here to do this. And you've got a nice dark line. Okay, now, give me a second, I'll turn my page. And you can see how nice that looks. Let me quit wiggling here. There. Now, if you don't like something that you see, for example, I'm noticing on camera that right next to the tail, it's a little bit darker than what I want, at least out from the outside. Again, I'm not hitting the part that's right next to the fish. I'm just doing the part that I want the shadow. Much better. Brush it. We're good to go. All right. See how cool that looks? Not too difficult at all. Now, you got to practice this a little bit. It took me a while. I'm going to go ahead and do my orange fish now. That way you'll be able to see the color contrast a little bit more. I'm right-handed, so this is what works best for me. Again, please don't forget to lay down your paper towel to rest your hand on. My point is relatively sharp, not super sharp, not like a needle, but you want it to make a nice, clean line. Not too thin, not too thick. And then the obvious question is, well, ILene, what's not too thin? What's not too thick? Well, you'll see visually as you're doing this. Practice. It's really hard. I'd say this is probably about a 1/16 of an inch in width, if I had to guess. All right, so there's my fish outlined in the dark blue, and that looks pretty nice too. But let's make it a little bit nicer. Now, I'm going to lighten up. As I work on that shadow. And remember, you're going to be using your blender pencil on this. So if you are a little bit streaky when you do this, that's fine. But as you get into practice of doing this, you'll find you'll be less and less streaky. But I still like to use my blender pencil anyway. Again, run parallel to the shape that you're doing the drop shadow on. See how I've got that little, I come in down and then out. Down, out, because the body goes down, out. Okay? I'm not pressing too hard, maybe again a 3 or a 4. And I'm just going to go ahead and run around the outline one more time. Okay. And now I'm going to get my blender pencil that I've cleaned off on a white piece of paper in between using colors. Even though I'm using the same one, it's a good habit to get into. And I'm very, very lightly smoothing out that pencil. All right, let's take a look at it now from the proper view. See how it looks. Oop. Let's see. Oh, there we go. See? I think that really looks good. Let's back out, and then you can go ahead and see the total effect. Now, if you want to, some of my outlines over on these fish look a little darker. This one looks a little lighter. So if you want to go ahead and fix that, fine. That's just going to be balancing between what you want and how you want it to look. Oop. I'm extending that dark blue out a little bit further. There is really no hard and fast rule as to how far out. You'll get the hang of it after a while, and it will basically become second nature to you. All right, there you go. And again, I'm going to do one more for you. Let's see which one here. I think I'm going to do this one right here for you. Alright, and I am going to sharpen my pencil because it's getting a little dull. This is my darkest blue. So, follow along with me. What do I do first? I outline the object that I'm adding the shadow to, in this case, the dark blue. Don't get in a hurry. Take your time. Let's see. Let me back up a little bit and get closer for you so you can see exactly what I'm doing. There we go. So I'm carefully outlining this. Pressure on my pencil is about an 8 out of 10. 7, 8 out of 10. Taking my time. Getting a nice dark line. There we go. That looks really neat, doesn't it? Okay. And our second step is what? Come back. Color next to that dark line. I'm pressing about, not really that hard, 3 or 4 maybe. Going to come out about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch maybe. Don't worry if your blue looks a little streaky, because we're going to go ahead and hit that with a blender pencil. Notice also, if I didn't mention it earlier that I'm doing my little circles here. Talked about that in part 1 of this video. And I know I didn't do the circles on the other fish, so sorry about that, but yeah, it's a great technique. And interestingly enough, when you do the circles, it gives you just about the right distance out. Okay. I'm going to use my blender pencil now. Hand resting on my paper towel so I don't smear my previous work. I'm not pressing hard. Maybe about a 3 on a scale from 1 to 10. Can round that a little bit. Sometimes I do this in circles as well. Just depends. Use my brush. Now, one thing I'm noticing on this one here is if you don't like the transition between your darkest line and your blending, you can go ahead and gently color over that as well. So now, even though it's the same color pencil, I'm coloring on the border between the dark pencil and, or the dark shadow, the dark line, and my shadow, just to merge that and mix it a little better. Back to my blender pencil. And you may go back and forth 2 or 3 times in doing that, and that's okay. Whatever looks good to make it look good for you. Put that. Let me turn this. And there we go. Now, I can see a little spotting over here on the left-hand side. That's where the page, for some reason, is creasing, because when I got the book, I pushed the binding open, and it created a little bit of a bump right there. So I'm going to have to think about that and see what I can do to fix that. But meanwhile, I'm thinking that looks a little dark, so now I'm going to use my blender pencil again, play with it, and going to get that out here. And I don't know if you can hear that groaning, but that's my dog for some reason, because she's sitting at my feet being a little obnoxious there. All right. Get my brush. Let me pull out with this. All right, let me show you the rest of the page. And there you go. Now, as you're finishing up your page, you can go ahead and tweak the shading. If you notice the shading on one or drop shadow on one looks funny, fix it. Make it look like it's consistent with everybody else. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is, let's talk about this fish for a minute. You're looking at these fish, all of them, as though the light is coming in from this direction. And that's where you're getting this shadow part. So as it comes in from the top, all of that, that's why you get the shadow on the bottom. And I'll tell you what, it really, look as I pull that out, how it makes all those fish pop. Isn't that terrific? Very straightforward process to make that shadowing. And again, if you don't like what you're doing, you can go ahead and erase or blend or add darker color right near the edge. So it's fixable. It's not the end of the world. So I hope this helps you. I hope you learned something. One thing, and I may even extend this, well, into another video yet, is I'm debating what to do about the background. As you know, I left all these white areas in between my fish, and only because I've got the, you can see where the white is, only because I've got these drop shadows now, which is another design element, I may end up coloring in the blue and making it a solid blue background. And that's okay too. Just because you decide one way at the beginning, as you color and make changes, you might change it to something else. So we'll see. I'll be posting this picture when I'm done. Or I may just make a part 3 video and you can take a look at it and see what I decided to do. Alright guys, so this is ILene Vick for Adult Coloring, and the series is Adult Coloring by ILene Vick. I hope this video helps you. Please let me know. If it does, give me a like on YouTube, because that way it gives me an incentive to make more videos. Take care.